Good morning, YouTube. We've been covering Fisker as it teeters on the edge of bankruptcy, but now it looks like it is done, and it won't land on its feet like Neelix. No.
It's terrible.
What?
That's like animal abuse.
It's a diagram. I mean, Neelix was representing Fisker at the moment.
That's
So
true.
Fisker hasn't declared bankruptcy. Has said they're done yet. They've been slashing the prices of their cars.
Right.
Seen as low as $30,000. There's still lingering cat hair around.
Yeah.
$30,000 online. Originally, they were like up to $80,000.
Right.
So more than half off.
Right.
Would you buy one?
I mean, like, you are getting a lot of car for the money, but if they're not going to be around to service it, like I know with your Fisker that you got, like, how are you going to get it fixed? You have to ship it off almost across the country to get some small tweaks done.
Right. Believe it or not, they've made 10,000 of them already in
Okay.
a short span, in a year or so.
It's a lot.
That's a lot more than original Fisker, which went down in a year. Their battery supplier actually quit. They went bankrupt, and that's what stopped the cars from being built.
Right.
So a little over 2,000 cars in the span of, I think, over a year. So already a lot more cars than the original Fisker Karma. So 10,000 of these things are floating around. But they're not saying they're dead yet, but all signs are pointing to it because Magna International is actually who manufactures the Fisker Ocean. And they recently did an earnings call or whatever, and they're talking about how they are in big trouble, that their
Right.
company is teetering on the edge themselves because they're no longer building the Ocean. The factory is idled, no more cars are being built, and they're pretty sure no cars will ever be built again.
That's rough.
So even though Fisker Automotive isn't bankrupt, they're not building any more cars. So what does that tell you?
Well, so the guy that did the review that kind of tanked their stock, from, was that from Jalopnik?
Marquise Brownlee, no, he's just a YouTuber.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much of an impact do you think he had on Fisker?
Huge, massive.
Right.
And it's so interesting because 15, 20 years ago, that would have been Top Gear. That would have been Clarkson, Hammond, or May. They would do a review, and that would make or break a car.
Right.
And how we talk about it, like we still talk about the Chrysler Crossfires, like a dog sitting to take a dump. Or the first generation Porsche Panamera just being, oh God, it's so hideous. Like, because it was the most watched show in the world at the
Right.
time, we all remember those reviews, and it really did make or break a car. But now, it is YouTube.
Exactly.
It really is YouTube. And the bigger channels have these opinions, and then the smaller channels usually parrot those opinions.
Right.
Or make a video just being contrary just because, and it becomes a big conversation point. And yeah, Marquise, I think he has a big credit to, well, and also Fisker for making another buggy, weird car. But
Right, and it is buggy, and then I do believe Fisker sent him a newer version of the Ocean with the updated software that they needed. He still didn't recommend this updated version, but that's a lot of power for someone to have. And I do feel like right now people love to talk shit. Am I allowed to say shit?
No.
People love to talk crap. Can I say crap?
Sure.
Is that another form of shit? People love to say bad things about electric cars. Like, that's the cool thing to do. That's the cool thing to go around the water cooler, go in the locker room talk, and just talk bad about electric
It's
cars.
worked on my Cybertruck because that video is closing in on 1 million views.
Right.
And most of the comments are, look at that turd, look at that weird
Right.
like most of it is negative, and as far as my like ratio, it's pretty low for me. But obviously, I'm being rewarded, sort of like how Whistle and Diesel makes everybody mad destroying something, but then gets a gazillion views. So the negativity is, it's like a Sith Lord feeding into the negativity and making more videos.
Right, but right now it's cool to dog these electric vehicles. And I kind of look at when cars first came out, like if right now we looked at the Model T and the Model A, would be like, oh, that's crap, that's crap, that's crap. But is that the same thing with these electric vehicles? And we just need to give them a moment to adjust. Like computers when they first came out, they were slow. That AOL dial-up took forever. Like we just need to wait and let technology catch up to where we think it should be. I don't know. So should we give Fisker some breathing room? Perhaps. I don't know.
I don't think so.
No.
They've had one chance with a Karma 12 years ago. They blew it. Same issues here with all the bugs and the problems. A beautiful car that's just not the best engineered software-wise. So they're doing the same thing again, and And it's going to be going the way of the dodo bird, as so many car companies have. And I looked it up because of the list. I mean, look at this. This is the A's. This is American car companies that have gone bankrupt. And there were so many around the turn of the century and the Depression that went out before, the big three sort of took over.
Right.
It's unbelievable how many car companies have gone bankrupt. And now Fisker's name is in there twice. Like, DeLorean's only in there once. Even though John DeLorean, he was the father of the muscle car by birthing the GTO. Not literally, but
That's my head. I
know,
was like,
my head went there too.
Oh.
But yeah, he went on to form his own car company and had it built in Ireland and got a lot of government credit to do that. And basically the car was a compromise and not what it was supposed to be, and failed with a drug deal gone wrong. And but they made similar numbers of DeLoreans. About 9,000 of them were built. So 10,000 Fiskers, 9,000 DeLoreans out there. Is it the next Back to the Future car because they buy it cheap and it looks cool and futuristic? And they won't remake Back to the Future, but I hope not. That's one I hope they don't touch. But,
they might do that with a Cybertruck.
but it's similar. So this is the new DeLorean. We haven't had this in a long time. There's a lot of brands that have gone and stopped making Pontiac or Plymouth, or but they're already existing in a big umbrella company. The whole company doesn't go bankrupt. These are just independent car companies that are dead.
But is Fisker as big as DeLorean as far as a cultural phenomenon?
Well, I don't think DeLorean really was. It was a car that was deeply discounted in 1982, 83 during the bankruptcy, where they were like half off or so.
Right.
But then the movie in 1985 just exploded it. These Fiskers are cool. I don't think they're cool enough to go into any kind of mythos or anything, because it just looks like every other electric SUV.
Right.
Styling, there's little details and touches that are neat, but it's not exceptional.
Right. I mean, of course, like we mentioned before, the solar panel roof, but it barely gets any charge. And I was listening to one YouTuber talk about how it maybe gets 1 to 2 miles of charge being out in full sun for days at a time. So I like the idea of it, and I want the technology to catch up. So I'm not completely dogging them yet because I'm excited that people are trying.
They're done. They're done. They're smoked. They're not building more cars. The writing's on the wall. They're just trying to sell what they have and grasping at straws here, but.
Is it a terrible idea to buy an Ocean right now?
Probably. I think it'll still get cheaper because right now it's about 30. I think they'll get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and then maybe when it's 15, 20 grand. And since they built enough, 10,000 of them, there'll be enough leftover parts, kind of like DeLorean, where there's enough. They had enough leftover cars that were never assembled to basically provide part support forever on the surviving DeLoreans.
That's amazing.
So I wonder if that'll be similar to the case with Fisker. I don't know.
Would you get an Ocean?
No.
Even if it was $5,000?
I got the Karma because I thought it was cooler looking. I thought the concept was better with the plug-in hybrid, and the powertrain choices match up to a lot of GM vehicles. And I just think it's a cooler car.
Yeah, it is.
This one doesn't do much for me.
Okay.
So, but it did send me down a rabbit hole of bankrupt car companies. So DeLorean is certainly the most similar, I would say, in a situation, except Henrik Fisker isn't getting caught doing drug deals as far as I know. He's just a designer that likes to design beautiful cars and then lends his name to these companies that go. But there were some fun ones in that list. The most famous probably electric car of the turn of the century was Detroit Electric.
Wow.
And so this is 1907 to 1939.
They were in business for a while.
100 years ago, there was a mass-produced electric car. They built 13,000 of these vehicles. So they're all around. They're still in museums. I've seen a few, but these were better at one point than internal combustion vehicles, just because they were so crude with power and all that stuff. But it didn't take long for gasoline-powered engines to eclipse these because the limited range and power and all that stuff.
And the oil companies sure didn't like that.
That's more in the case with the modern era, with the EV1. There's a whole documentary, Who Killed the Electric Car. Back then, oil, it was like one guy, like Rockefeller, had all the oil. They were richer beyond imagination. They weren't trying to squash anything. It was just good old-fashioned free market, and the internal combustion engine was way better. So they quit. They went under in the 30s. They kept building cars for a little while, just people doing one-off orders. But the real reason why Detroit Electric went under is just their tech was eclipsed by normal cars. And that's what we had until very recently.
How different would our world be if they stayed in production and just kept plugging through and kept going? Like, we would be in a drastically different place with electric cars right now.
Yeah,
Maybe.
and don't know if we're going to continue down this electric line because it is so unpopular, it is so expensive. It'll be amazing if they're able to figure out this technology where you charge in 5 minutes to 500 miles of range. And that's basically where these need to be a viable replacement for a gasoline car. And it doesn't seem like it's something in the near possibility, but maybe not.
Well,
maybe.
you brought up the point of charging it at your home. It's not good for long road trips, but like our cell phones, we charge those overnight and use them every day, and we're perfectly happy with them. And it's the same thing with electric cars. We just have to change our lifestyle, perhaps, with charging.
I don't think so. Like I want to be able to drive 1,000 miles in a day. I've done it before.
You do it all the time.
Yes.
It's crazy.
So, the next one that I thought was funny, I
Yeah.
saw the name, I thought, is this associated with the brand? It's Playboy Automobile Company.
Really? Wait, you haven't already started?
Nope, this is before Playboy. This is before
Really?
Marilyn Monroe and the first centerfold, like almost a decade.
Wow.
In 1947. And look at these things. They're just little bitty two-seat kind of convertibles.
They remind me a little bit of Art Deco-y styling, which is about the era then. Interesting. Sorry, I'm falling off. Taking a look. I think they're interesting looking. I wouldn't, spend a lot of time checking it out, but...
Right, it looks kind of like a Nash to me, like a Nash Metropolitan a little bit.
Yeah.
But so it had like a steel folding hardtop that sort of common today, but it actually folded up and clammed in. It was pretty cool tech, of course, back in the 40s, which we see a lot everywhere now, but kind of an ugly, weird, underpowered car. Only in production for a very short time, and they made less than 100 of them.
Huh, interesting. In Buffalo, New York. Right.
So yeah, just under 199 cars total. A prototype, 97 production cars. Then they shuttered up.
Right.
They were able to kind of put one together that was still not finished on the assembly line. So 99 cars from 47 to 51.
Interesting.
Similar to Tucker, I suppose, which that is quite a story with Tucker and the whole film with him. But whether the big three conspired to put him under or if it was just bad business management and money stuff, because obviously it was always an underfunded company where they're selling radios as sort of deposits, so people have a lot of Tucker radios and things.
Well, after seeing your massive Wikipedia list of failed car companies, because I always was like, oh, the big three shut Tucker down, but it really is a lot of people have tried and failed in the automotive industry.
Right.
More have failed.
So around 50 of those built before it went under. So they barely started to build cars before they went under and failed. And really there was a lot of issues with that helicopter engine being reliable. There was a lot of quality issues similar to what Fisker's experiencing today.
Right.
But they didn't get very far when it comes to selling cars. And the last alternative fuel one I wanted to mention was steam cars. Going through Jay Leno's steam room is just so cool. But the Stanley Steamer one was a pretty long run, like 1902 to 1924. They made a lot of these cars. They made, at their best year, 500 cars in a year. Stanley Steamers, which is just boiling up water and capturing that energy and making it go. Which
Sounds so dangerous.
It wasn't the Stanley, but another car that's actually what burned Jay Leno, trying to light the pilot light and getting that all to go, the boilers and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think so. It wasn't. It was I think one of his weird steam room cars.
Right.
But this one was the most reliable, it was the best looking, and there's the most of these out there. But it's kind of sad. This company went under because the founders were brothers, Francis and Freeland. And Francis was sort of the brains of the operation. He's coming up with all the engineering and all this stuff. He died in a car accident in 1918 around there.
Right.
And basically that ended any innovation with Stanley. They sold the company off after his death. He continued on for a few years, but once again got eclipsed by gasoline engines, and since he wasn't there to refine the process to improve the cars, they just kept going year after year after year with the same stuff, which got kind of old and just seemed inferior and way more expensive to gasoline cars, because then the Model T came out and all that stuff. Stanley was no more. So if he had not gotten in that car accident, would he have come up with the next thing to make steam power the way we went for the next 100 years?
Right. Interesting.
Who knows?
Who knows? That's true.
So Fisker joins a long line of bankrupted car companies. Even though they're not bankrupt yet, it's happening.
I would get one.
And I own a piece of its history. Thank you so much for watching.
I would totally get an Ocean.